Hey everybody, happy Tuesday. Welcome to this week's Power Session call. Super excited to be here with you on Facebook Live. We are live. I am back in my office. Thanks so much for those of you who joined us last week when I was in New York City under the, near the George Washington Bridge overlooking the New York skyline. It was a little windy at first, but we had a blast. It was super fun. Was out there just packing everything I could with my wife and some really good friends, including Miriam and her husband, just incredible hosts to us as we just had an amazing blast. Everywhere from Atlantic City to New Jersey to New York City, tons of Broadway shows and experiences and all kinds of stuff. It was a great trip. So back in the office today. So yes, I know I was technically in New Jersey, but New York City just sounds so much more extravagant. So anyway, all right. Oh, I look great. Oh, thank you, Rosanna. I appreciate that. I've been trying to get some. I got a pretty sick household right now. My middle daughter got sick last week, and then now my youngest and my wife are going through the paces. So, but interesting piece for. Now that you mentioned that, for today, as we're going to be talking about persistence, because I was up the majority of the night with my 5-year-old and trying to help my wife feel better. But still, when my alarm went off at 4:30 this morning, I will admit I hit snooze once for 10 minutes. I am not perfect, so I hit snooze, but then I got up anyway, went to the gym, had a great workout. It was back day, which is one of my favorite things to do. A lot of compound movements, lots of the body involved in that kind of exercise. And now having a great day here. Tuesdays are one of my favorite days because I get to spend a mastermind with my coaches, the Mandino and Habit Finder coaches, that we mastermind together every week. And then I get to come here for these power sessions, and then I've got coaching sessions in between all of that. So Tuesdays are a great day. So super excited to be here. Good afternoon, Eric. Good to see you. Let's see here. Hey there from Utah. I will persist until I succeed. We're definitely going to be talking about that quite a bit. Show us your shirt. Okay. I was wondering if anyone was going to ask. When I backed up, I'm sure people were going to see it. So this is Wild Stallions, Most Excellent World Tour 1989. If you don't know that reference, it makes my heart sad. But Wild Stallions is Bill and Ted's band from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. If you went on to watch that one, they announced recently that Bill and Ted's 3, Face the Music, will be coming out, or they're starting production. And so it'll be coming out in the next year or two. So super excited about that. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. I love Bill and Ted. I have a license plate border thing. It's actually in my trunk right now because the car wash totally mashed it up, but it said be excellent to each other. Anyway, love, that's one of my favorite movies. And I've got this shirt and I've got another Bill and Ted shirt, but I was just feeling hip today. So I figured I'd put on a shirt and a sports coat and we'd have a nice balance. So anyway, good stuff to talk about today. Party on, dude. Absolutely. So lots of fun to talk about today in terms of persistence, because it's a really major part of our lives. You think about the sequence that Og Mandino takes us through in The Greatest Salesman in the World. See if I can get a non-glare. There we go. In The Greatest Salesman in the World that Og Mandino wrote 50 years ago, where the heart of this book are the scrolls, because a simple camel boy wanted to become the greatest salesman in the world. So he went and tracked down Pathros, who was the greatest salesman in the world at the time. And Pathros ended up giving him the 10 scrolls, the wisdom of the ages, that he then says is what allowed him to amass his fortunes and his success. So it's not necessarily about sales, although it is, but it's really, the theme is about being the greatest version of you that you possibly can through these intrinsic principles that are taught through these 10 scrolls. And you think about the sequence. Og starts us off with, today I will begin a new life, which is the name of our best-selling book, Today I Begin a New Life, because that's where it all starts. We want to be focused every morning on this. We want to be focused every morning on a blank slate, because today is all that we've got. And Og goes on to address that in scroll number 5, when he says that we'll live this day as if it's our last. But so we've got today I begin a new life, where we're going to hit the reset button, because we work with a lot of clients. I work with a lot of people who wake up every morning with emotional debt, which is like waking up in the morning to a $10,000 tax return and then a $20,000 medical bill in the next envelope. It's really difficult to think about the possibilities of today and then immediately feel like you're starting behind the finish line, like you're starting in some kind of debt. And that's actually one of the greatest dangers of debt in general, is debt that we allow to create emotional debt. There are some debts that are worthwhile in investments and other things. So it's not about debt categorically across the board, okay? But we get an opportunity to be able to dive into the sequence of the scrolls, and we see, today I begin a new life. Hit a reset button. It's one of the healthiest things you can do every day. Not that yesterday doesn't matter. Yesterday did matter, but it has no bearing on today. There are no things about yesterday that we should allow to mark out a path that is threatening our future, as Og would talk about. Then we come to scroll 2. Now that we've hit the reset button, now that we're willing to work on us as a blank slate, totally open, emotionally and spiritually, and ready to be taught and to become more conscious and aware of what we're doing, now we can move into scroll 2, which is actually what Og called the greatest secret of success in all ventures, okay? Getting the opportunity to be able to practice love. Scroll 2 is, I will greet this day with love in my heart, and a very particular kind of love that we've talked about on here before and that we spend a lot of time on with our clients, and that is agape love, which is the highest form of love in the Greek language, meaning a heightened level of awareness. It's the only love that is not emotionally driven. And it's the love that we want to guide all of our decisions, because it brings us to the reality, and I talked about this a few weeks ago, that if we love people, it's because we see them accurately, or we want to see them accurately. If we don't love people, it's because we don't see them accurately, or we don't want to see them accurately. So that's a beautiful, simplistic way of evaluating how we're feeling about other people and how they might be driving us nuts, or how we seem to have so much more patience for this person than that person. What a great way to experience. Wow, if I have so much more patience for my clients and then I get home and I bite my spouse's head off, I might want to consider, how accurately am I seeing these people, or how accurately am I wanting to see these people? Because we might want to see our clients accurately because that's how we're going to make money and that's how we're going to provide for our family. And then we assume that they should just see that effort and just understand that we love them and appreciate them, but we still will want to show up with agape love all around. And what's great is we want to make sure that we're following this sequence so that we're not draining ourselves by managing all these unhealthy habits. That's one of the number one causes of challenges in relationships for those who are entrepreneurial or work professionally, is we spend so much time heavily managing our unhealthy habits of thinking at work because we have to. Because if we don't, we're going to get fired. If we don't, we're not going to be successful. And then we won't have a home. And then we'll be out on the street and all this different stuff. So we've got all these extrinsic motivations out here, but we drain ourselves managing unhealthy habits out here that by the time we come home, have the opportunity to be able to show up intrinsically, we've got nothing left, okay? We've got nothing left. And why is it harder with extended family? Programming, conditioning, impatience, really poor assumptions. I mean, we could probably do a whole power session on that. So anyway, back to the sequence. Today I begin a new life. I will greet this day with love in my heart. And then we come to the scroll we're going to talk about today, and that is, I will persist until I succeed. Now, I want to read this to you first, and then I'll pull out the 4 secrets, the 4 keys that are within this formula for you to be able to persist effectively. Because it's not just about persisting. We want to persist effectively, okay? Now, I'm going to read this to you the way that I like to read them, which is not in first person. They're written in the first person. I will persist until I succeed. I like to read them in a different pronoun, and that is the you, the second person. You will persist until you succeed. Now, if you'd like, you can close your eyes unless you're driving. Hopefully you're not focused on the screen if you're driving, but if you'd like, you can close your eyes and give me an opportunity to speak these words to you the way you were taught growing up, because you weren't necessarily taught first, I am this, I am that. It was other people telling you, you are this, you are that, you aren't this, you aren't that. that eventually taught you to bring it in and adopt it as I. And so I'd like to start where that started and share this with you as a you, and then we'll extract these 4 pieces, okay? Okay, here we go. Scroll mark 3. You will persist until you succeed. In the Orient, young bulls are tested for the fight arena in a certain manner. Each is brought to the ring and allowed to attack a picador who pricks them with a lance. The bravery of each bull is then rated with care according to the number of times he demonstrates his willingness to charge in spite of the sting of the blade. Henceforth will you recognize that each day you are tested by life in like manner. If you persist, if you continue to try, if you continue to charge forward, you will succeed. You will persist until you succeed. You were not delivered unto this world in defeat, nor does failure course in your veins. You are not a sheep waiting to be prodded by your shepherd. You are a lion, and you refuse to talk, to walk, to sleep with the sheep. You will hear not those who weep and complain, for their disease is contagious. Let them join the sheep. The slaughterhouse of failure is not your destiny. You will persist until you succeed. The prizes of life are at the end of each journey, not near the beginning. It is not given to you to know how many steps are necessary in order to reach your goal. Failure you may encounter even at the 1,000th step, yet success hides behind the next bend in the road. Never will you know how close it lies unless you turn the corner. Always will you take another step. If that is of no avail, you will take another, and yet another. In truth, one step at a time is not too difficult. You will persist until you succeed. Henceforth, you will consider each day's efforts as but one blow of your blade against a mighty oak. The first blow may cause not a tremor in the wood, nor the second, nor the third. Each blow of itself may be trifling and seem of no consequence. Yet, from childish swipes, the oak will eventually tumble. So it will be with your efforts of today. You will be likened to the raindrop which washes away the mountain, the ant which devours a tiger, the star which brightens the earth, the slave who builds a pyramid. You will build your castle one brick at a time, for you know that small attempts repeated will complete any undertaking. You will persist until you succeed. You will never consider defeat, and you will remove from your vocabulary such words and phrases as quit, cannot, unable, impossible, out of the question, improbable, failure, unworkable, hopeless, and retreat. For they are the words of fools. You will avoid despair. But if this disease of the mind should infect you, then you will work on in despair. You will toil and you will endure. You will ignore the obstacles at your feet and keep your eyes on the goals above your head. For you know that where dry desert ends, green grass grows. You will persist until you succeed. You will remember the ancient law of averages, and you will bend it to your good. You will persist with knowledge that each failure to sell will increase your chance for success at the next attempt. Each nay you hear will bring you closer to the sound of yea. Each frown you meet only prepares you for the smile to come. Each misfortune you encounter will carry in it the seed of tomorrow's good luck. You must have the night to appreciate the day. You must fail often to succeed only once. You will persist until you succeed. You will try and try and try again. Each obstacle you will consider as a mere detour to your goal and a challenge to your profession. You will persist and develop your skills as the mariner develops his, by learning to ride out the wrath of each storm. You will persist until you succeed. Henceforth, you will learn and apply another secret of those who excel in your work. When the day is ended, not regarding whether it has been a success or a failure, you will attempt to achieve one more sale. When your thoughts beckon your tired body homeward, you will resist the temptation to depart. You will try again. you will make one more attempt to close with victory. And if that fails, you will make another. Never will you allow any day to end with a failure. Thus will you plant the seed of tomorrow's success and gain an insurmountable advantage over those who cease their labor at a prescribed time. When others cease their struggle, then yours will begin, and your harvest will be full. You will persist until you succeed, nor will you allow yesterday's success to lull you into today's complacency, for this is the great foundation of failure. You will forget the happenings of the day that is gone, whether they were good or bad, and greet the new sun with confidence that this will be the best day of your life. So long as there is breath in you, that long will you persist. For now you know one of the greatest principles of success. If you persist long enough, you will win. You will persist. You will win. Scroll number 3 from The Greatest Salesman in the World. One of the greatest lessons. It's the third scroll, the third biggest priority into achieving the greatest version of you. The first is to begin a new life every day. Hit the reset button. The second is to love and allow love to be your greatest weapon, something you bring with you everywhere, that guards you, that shields you, that's your sword, that's also your guide, your North Star. And then number 3, persist. That you will bring love to your persistence. You will bring living today as if it's your last to your persistence. Those are the top 3 scrolls that Og wrote to be able to guide us in terms of being able to accomplish what we want to accomplish. Now, what I'd like to do today, if I can find my markers really quick, is I'd like to extract 4 of the secrets that I believe will allow you to persist effectively or more effectively. Many of you may already be persisting well, and I'd like to help you persist even better. Many of you may have tried to persist and were frustrated because you didn't consider these 4 pieces, okay? Now, before we do that, I'll have a warning at the beginning of these 4 pieces and a warning at the end. Now, we're told a lot about being able to figure out our why. A lot of conversation out there in the world about knowing your why. You should have a deeper why. If you don't have the do or the how, it's because your why isn't deep enough. This is a powerful principle, being able to understand your why. A couple important things to understand about your why. Your why is a moving target. Why? Because so is your brain. Your brain is all over the place. Millions of unconscious thoughts a day. 80,000 plus conscious thoughts a day. I mean, that's a lot of noise. That's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of things that then you bring in the tangibles of our emotions and our personalities and our tendencies and our behaviors and our environments and our circumstances and our influences around us. And you're talking about a why that is constantly changing. Now, you may have a big why, but you're going to want to have some whys that guide you in between. Some things that change. Now, for example, your why may be because you want to help people. But if you don't feel like helping people today, then how good is that why going to serve you? Because now your why becomes something that you hold hostage. It becomes something that you beat yourself over the head with because I don't feel like helping people today. And so what do? We pretend that we do, and we try to go through the motions, which just creates greater fatigue, which creates greater rebellion, which creates the risk of quitting. And we all quit, whether for the day or for the afternoon or for weeks at a time, or we totally bail and quit. And then we run into guilt and we roll right back into it again. That obligation cycle we've talked about so many times on here before. Now, I want to talk about why in terms of the most dangerous why there is. Okay? The most dangerous why there is. Because just as exploring and getting deeper and deeper with your why, getting more and more agile, okay, like a boxer, getting more and more agile with your why, so that when you get punched in the face, you don't just bail and leave and quit on the fight, but being able to understand this wonderful gift of being able to go deeper and deeper into your own soul, into your own service, into your own intentions and all these things. This is the most dangerous why. and it holds so many people back. Okay? And it is the why I don't fill in the blank. The most dangerous why, okay, we've got a rogue exclamation point here, okay? The most dangerous why is trying to figure out why you don't fill in the blank. Why don't I make calls consistently? Why don't I, and it could be do I, but it's going to be a negative influence. So it could be why do I, but they're both going to lead to the same thing. They're going to be things that you don't do. So why do I procrastinate? Why do I eat things that don't support my health? Why don't I do the right things? Why don't I about our failures, about our shortcomings, and about our problems and our challenges? We've had this drilled into our brain so many times that your why is everything. If you can figure that out, then you're going to be able to create. You're going to be able to create passion. You're going to be able to create persistence. You're going to be able to create your dreams. And that is true. Understanding your why and how it works is important. But if you flip that into trying to figure out why you don't do something, or why you do something that you wish you didn't do, that is a perpetual, futile, never-ending rabbit hole of failure and procrastination and anger and frustration. Because there is something in the brain, we've talked about this, that wants to keep you predictable. So it will feed this all day long. Oh yeah, sure. Let's spend tons of time trying to figure out why we aren't more consistent. Let's spend tons of energy trying to figure out why we procrastinate, and why this person drives us nuts, and why that person is so hard to work with, and why this system isn't better, and why do we have to do it that way, and why don't I, to ad nauseum, to death. Because there's some part of us that becomes convinced that if I can just fill in this blank, if I can just figure out why I don't do that, that the light bulb will go on. And suddenly I'll start doing what I wanted to be doing in the first place. What I wanted to be doing based on the results that I want to receive, I should clarify. Have any of you experienced this? Have any of you fallen into this trap? Okay, this emotional hamster wheel, this mental never-ending loop that we get running in. Oh, if I could just figure out why I do that, or just figure out why I don't do that, then everything will take care of itself. Well, figuring out why you don't do something doesn't lead to doing it. It just leads to a never-ending pit of constantly trying to figure out and dig deeper, like a dog digging for a bone. We're just trying to dig for some kind of bone to be able to get where we want to go, convinced that we just need to figure out why we did it wrong. Why can't I do it the way I saw it in my head? Why can't I do it as good as that person? As if we could answer that question, everything would be okay. It's a lie. It's not true. And you can waste so much of your life, time and energy, trying to answer this question, and the answer does you nothing. Absolutely nothing. Okay? Those of you who have seen UHF know the reference I just made. Anyone else, I apologize. Okay? It does, and then that would be followed by a stupid! But anyway, answering this question doesn't do you anything other than waste time and energy. Seriously, do you want to figure out why you got the answer wrong, or would you rather go get the right answer? Okay, if you got something wrong on a test, what do? Do you study why you came up with the wrong answer, or do you go study and figure out what the right answer was? That's where we want to focus our energy. So before we even start to persist, I want you to make a commitment that you are going to start to recognize and let go of the need to answer this question, because it is a waste of time. And you'll finally be able to take the energy that's going into this crap and put it into your why of creation, not why you didn't create, why you couldn't create, why you haven't been able to create. And now we can figure out a why worth creating for, because we're no longer going to surrender that energy into why we didn't do it. Who cares why? You're not on trial. Okay? We don't need to prove intent beyond a shadow of a doubt. Okay? We know that we didn't do it, and we know why we didn't do it. The answer to this is always the same. Unhealthy habits of thinking. That's why. Why did I do that? Because I surrendered to unhealthy habits of thinking. Why didn't I do that? Because I surrendered to unhealthy habits of thinking. That's it. Done. End of story. Now we can start focusing on why we want to go create something. Now we can go put our study and our energy and our activity into what we want to create and what the right answers are. Okay? Now, that's super important before we get into this persistence discussion. Because otherwise, we're going to get into persist until we succeed. And what are we going to persist for? We're going to persistently go after trying to answer a question that doesn't matter. A question that doesn't serve you. Okay? So we want to make sure our persistence is pointed the right direction. Now, let's talk about the persistence formula. I will persist until I succeed. O. Okay? There are 4 keys that are hidden within the scrolls that I believe are pillars for effective persistence. To be able to charge the picador despite the sting of the blade. To be able to get through our dry desert to reach green grass. How do we do that? Step 1 is we decide. Persistence without a decision is like having a motor for a boat without the whatever it's called that directs the boat. Okay. Wah, wah. Totally bombed on that analogy. I'm sure someone can comment through as to what I'm not thinking of. But having persistence without a decision is like getting in the car to go somewhere without knowing where you're headed or having a GPS or directions for it. Okay. So first thing we're going to want to do is to be able to guide our persistence, to be able to send it in the right direction. And that happens with a decision. Decide, which means to cut off from. What are we cutting off from? Well, first of all, we're cutting off from what we were just talking about. We're cutting off from this need to figure out why we're not doing something and what's wrong with me. If I could just figure out what's wrong with me, then I could go create what's right with me. No, you don't get to do both. You don't get to pour energy into what you do want in life and pour energy into what you don't want in life and end up getting what you want. Okay? It's like trying to play sports without getting hurt. More often than not, you're going to get hurt. If you're trying to go after what you want by focusing on what you don't want, you're more than likely going to get what you don't want. So we're going to start making decisions. Now, a couple quick things on decisions. One thing in particular. Decisions are not actions. Okay? To decide is not actions. We are not deciding to go to the gym every day. That's an action. An action is what supports the decision. Now, if we think the decision is the action, because it makes a lot of sense, I'm going to decide to go to the gym every day. Well, guess what? Every day becomes a renegotiation and a relitigation over the terms of your decision because it's an action. And an action is what comes as a natural outcome of a decision. It is not the decision itself. So with a limited foundation, it becomes something we can renegotiate and relitigate every day. Anyone ever made a decision or thought they had made a decision and then the actions didn't follow? Well, more than likely your decision was around actions or was a decision that was too abstract and too general. Those are the two most common challenges to decisions that don't work. We made a decision that was based on an action rather than the decision that would lead to that action, or we made a decision on something that was too general, too abstract. We weren't specific enough. It wasn't tangible. For example, we don't decide to get healthy. We don't decide to be a better spouse. That's too abstract, too general. We don't decide to have a successful business. We get specific. We make a decision that has a specific outcome, a measurable outcome, and a specific date tied to it. The measurable outcome is what we want to bring as our energy to what we're doing. The date is a really educated guess that we're going to hold ourselves to. But it is, at the end of the day, it's a guess. So if I'm going to say that my income will be $1.2 million a year by December 31st, 2020, okay? By December 31st, 2019, excuse me. By December 31st, 2019, my income will be $1.2 million a year. On track for that or whatever, okay? And then I accomplish that in November. Am I going to beat myself up for having said December but achieving it in November? Of course not. But on the same token, if you achieve it in February of 2020, is it going to be all that bad? So that's the balance we've got in terms of the dates. They are a guess, but they should be a really solid guess. But where the really comes in is the decision, and it's not an action. Okay? And make sure it's specific. All right, so that's step one. Guide your persistence with a decision. The rudder. Thank you, Mom. Okay. It's the rudder. Okay. A bunch of other people coming through too. Thanks, Debbie, Sally. Awesome. Rotary dirter. Oh, that's awesome. Megan, I loved your post yesterday, by the way, for April Fool's. She had a transformation post on her Facebook page. You should check it out. It was hilarious. Anyway, so decide. April Fool's Day was the day that I proposed to my wife, by the way, which makes a lot of sense if you know me really well. So moving on. Number one, decide. The decision is not an action. The decision is what will lead to those actions. The natural outcome will be the actions that support the decision. So if I decide that I'm going to have a business that generates this much a month and has this much net profit by December 31st, 2019, then I know that every action I take should support that, and any action that doesn't support that is now cut off. Decide to cut off from. It's no longer on the menu. Very similar to deciding something for your health journey. I'm going to weigh X amount and be able to do X, Y, and Z by December 31st or by September 30th. Now, we highly recommend that this be in a 6-month scope, okay? No more than a year, but 6 to 12 months is ideal for any decision to guide your persistence, okay? All right, I think we're good there with number one. All right, cool. Very funny. All right, number two is commit. We're going to decide. I'm going to make a decision. It's physical. You should feel it. It should make you nervous. It should get you excited. It should have you scared. It should have you encouraged. It should do all of these things because you've really had an opportunity to consider what you're doing. Now, you may not be 100% confident you can pull it off, but that's why you're making a decision, because you're cutting off the option to bail or to let go or to rationalize or quit. You're cutting that off regardless of the feelings. Okay, because feelings do not have an part of the equation in decide, other than they come later in feeling awesome when you achieve and accomplish your decision. But then we're going to commit. Okay, commit is interesting because if you break down the word, okay, you have co, which means together, and then you have meter, okay, which, make sure I get this exactly correct, it means to release or let go. So we've decided, bam, cut it off, okay? Just like we're getting ready to prepare a fish, bam, we cut off the fish's head, and now we're going to let it go. We're going to release it. We're going to get rid of it. We're going to let go of and release the things in our life that do not support our decision. Now, here's the really important piece for why commit, to commit to something and decide on something, sound very familiar, okay? However, the reason I think it's so important that there are two separate things is that to decide, boom, to cut off from, is between you and your decision. To commit is to release and let go of everything in your life that prevents you from accomplishing your decision, and to do it together. Well, who's together? Who is that with? Well, that's where we're going to make our decision. And then as part of committing to that decision, we are going to release and let go of things together. We're going to let go of tension in our relationships that don't serve our decision. We're going to let go of things in our house that don't support our health decision. We're going to let go of things that distract us from being more productive and more fulfilled and more peaceful. We're going to release these things, but no one does it alone. To commit to something is to literally, you're committing, you're doing this with someone together, multiple people, in fact, more the better, to be able to start to release and let go, because other people will see things that you don't see. Other people will support you in ways you didn't know you needed, whether that's in having a coach, a mentor, whether that's having an accountability partner, friends, people, loved ones, people worth living for. All of these are people you want to be involved when you are committing to your decision. It is futile, frustrating, and oftentimes impossible to commit to persistence if you're not doing it with people. People, a person, a human being, is the highest intrinsic value in the world. Priceless, beyond value. So we are committing with people to support our decision, to release and let go. And sometimes there are people we'll need to release and let go of to be able to support our decision. Maybe we'll talk about that more on another power session. Okay? All right. Now, definitely easier said than done. Absolutely, 100% agree with that. Easier said than done, or as I've said on here many times, easier said than become. Now, number 3, now that we have made a decision, boom, and we have committed, we have decided as a part of our decision that we are going to do this together. We have identified the stakeholders in our persistence and in our life. There is no more, I'm going to put my head down and figure this out, and then I'll get my loved ones involved. I'm going to put my head down and get this figured out, and then I'll get my mentorship involved. No, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to do this with people, because then we're serving ourselves and them. And we're going to do this by serving people. We're going to do this by relying on people. We're going to do this by letting go of the things that do not support our decision that is guiding and driving our persistence. Number 3, we're going to evaluate. Persistence will fail without evaluation. Now, this is number 3. Number 3, we've made a decision, bam, and we're now taking the actions that support that decision. We are committing, we are involving others in being able to let go of and release the things in our life that do not support our decision, okay, sometimes including people. And now we're evaluating. So now we're in motion, now we're in action. We have the direction, we have the committed, the support system for our persistence, okay? And so now we are evaluating. Now this is not persist, then stop, relax, chill, slow down, and evaluate. No, this is evaluate as you're going along. Persistence is much like being in the ring for boxing, and Mike Tyson put it beautifully when he said, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. So what we're not going to do is get punched in the face and say, oh, I can't do this. I can't win this fight. I'm out. We're also not going to get punched in the face and then just keep walking towards our opponent, getting punched in the face over and over and over and over again. We're going to evaluate. We're going to make intuitive decisions. We're going to make instinctive decisions. We're going to make shifts and bob and weave, and we're going to stay the course, and we're going to stay tough. We're going to keep our hands up. We're going to be aware and conscious as we persist. Okay? Now here, a lot of people will talk about, with persistence, burning the ships. Well, evaluation is a really important part of that. Because what we want to do is we want to make sure before we burn the ship, we've made a decision. Because if you burn the ship without a decision, you're going to try and swim home, okay? Doesn't matter if there's sharks in the water or dangerous things, okay? You're also going to find yourself very alone without that decision, without that understanding and that commitment. You're also going to, the other risk of burning the ships, as I've talked about, is burning the ships, and then no evaluation, just putting your head down and charge, just going for the enemy with all the gusto and effort that you can, without any preparation, without any guidance, without any evaluation. Okay? Evaluation was taught to me beautifully, by one of my mentors, one of my coaches, Jason Cisneros, who called this commander's intent. Now, commander's intent is the singular goal. It's the most important objective. So that if anything goes wrong in the very carefully detailed construct of our plan, okay, while we're persisting, we made the decision, but the decision wasn't this concrete construct for happiness. It was, this is where we're going to be, and this is when we're going to be there. And then we're committing to allow others to help us and to release and let go of things that won't support that, so that as obstacles arise, so that as dry deserts appear, as Og talked about, we can persist, we can push through as we're evaluating our intent. What happens to most of us is we make a decision about the actions we're going to take. So we're making a doing decision rather than a being decision. We don't commit, meaning we commit alone, which is not possible because co means together or with. And then we wait until we totally get knocked off course, totally get discouraged to evaluate what went wrong. And then we slip right back into that most dangerous why, and figuring out why it didn't work and why we couldn't do it and why we didn't persist, and trying to answer a question that doesn't matter, rather than continuing to persist and evaluating along the way whether the actions we're taking, whether the solutions we're implementing, whether the ideas we're having are in alignment with commander's intent. Are they in alignment with your decision? Now, many of you have challenges with boundaries. If you've taken the Habit Finder, if you haven't, go to habitfinder.com right now and take it. It's the most incredible, it is the #1 personal development tool in the world. What it can measure, what it can tell you, especially with the help of an expert coach, is unmatched. It's unbelievable, okay? And if you go to your myself section, okay, and you go down to the second to last measurement there, and if it goes to the left, to self-sacrificing, that second to last measurement there, then definitely pay attention to this. But more than likely, a lot of you, especially if you have a very servant heart, very loving, very caring heart, in terms of overdone, okay, overcooked in terms of that heart, then the risk that we run is that we are painting the boundaries on the field while we're playing the game. We haven't made a decision, not clearly. We have things that we're interested in, but we haven't created a true desire from a real decision. We haven't committed. We're trying to do too much on our own. We're thinking too much about us. We make it sound like we're thinking about them. I don't want to do this. I don't want them to think this. I don't want them to feel like I'm trying to this or that, which all of those start with I. So we're thinking about ourselves, and we're not evaluating during the battle. We're not evaluating as we persist. We're not staying focused on the boundaries that we're creating, and therefore things become urgent that aren't that urgent. Things become important that aren't that important. And we get caught up in what Chris McChesney would call the whirlwind, which is all the stuff. And then eventually we lose the energy and the focus and the drive to be able to persist. And so we quit, and then we go back into figuring out why we quit, until we just get so tired of not being able to answer that question that we either move on to something else, or we jump right back into being obligated to try and figure it out again. So make a decision, commit to it together. Who are you committing with? Who are the stakeholders in your life? Evaluate it along the way. Evaluate it along the way. And number 4 is push, which the root of the word push means to drive. I love what my dad says when he says that God doesn't drive, or God can't drive parked cars, or can't guide parked cars. Clients have come saying, I don't know what I should do. I'm not sure what I should do. And the most common answer is do something. Drive, push. Now push appropriately. which if you are doing 1, 2, and 3, this will be done really well. Professional athletes know when to push, know how to push to prevent themselves from becoming injured, to prevent themselves from going too far and going overboard. So trust that if you make a decision, you commit and you evaluate along the way that you can push, that you can drop that gear and put your foot on the gas and go and know when it's time to shift again. Now, many of us drive first and then try to evaluate our drive, figure out who, if there is anyone we want to be involved with, and then make a decision based on all of that. We go backwards. That's really dangerous because most of us that drive first, just go, are driving down the freeway stuck in first gear, which is really dangerous, really rough on an engine to be able to do that, okay? To be able to consider the fact that drive is the fourth of these things. It's super important, but it comes after the decision, after the commitment and the evaluation that gives us the opportunity to know when and where we can drive without pushing ourselves too hard and burning out and creating all kinds of collateral damage, okay? Now, Paige says, I got confused. Is it bad to paint boundaries on the field while playing the game? Thank you. Sorry, I apologize if I left that hanging. Yes. I mean, imagine right now if we were watching the Super Bowl and they're painting the lines, okay, every 10 yards and the little dash marks and the hashes and everything like that while they're playing the game. Can you imagine the chaos from that? Not just to mention the people doing it and getting in the way of the game, but also you're not going to know whether someone was really out of bounds because there isn't a line painted yet. Or you just decided that is out of bounds, so you paint a line there and then it ends up not lining up with everything else. Or how are you going to know when they got a first down or where they are at in the field or whether they got a touchdown because the lines are not painted on the field yet? Too many of us are driving without and evaluating in our quit time and our burnout time, and then we go out there without a decision and a commitment, and so we don't have the correct boundaries, we don't have the right guidance, we don't have the right commander's intent, and so we're trying to figure out the boundaries as we're playing the game. I mean, imagine playing volleyball and just you kind of decide after each shot whether it was out of bounds or not, just because of kind of what you were feeling. Yet so many of us are doing that every day with our businesses, with our families, with our lives. We're going out there and we had a general idea of what we wanted, but we were more interested in it. We kind of wanted to figure out and test the waters, but we're going to make it sound like we're totally committed. We hadn't made a decision. We hadn't involved anybody else to commit, to be committed, to be accountable together, and to let go of the things that don't support our decision. And so things that really weren't that urgent become urgent. And suddenly we feel like I have to respond to everybody's messages within 2 minutes or I am a total failure and I'm not going to succeed. That's not true. But it could feel like that, especially if you hadn't made a clear decision and a clear commitment and you weren't evaluating the most important objective every step of the way. It's amazing to me how many of us start here, okay, and we made a decision about getting here. And we start going, and we get off track first, and then we even start going backwards, and then go, oh yeah, forgot about that. Okay, I'm back, oh, and then we start going off track, and then we start going backwards, and then we get over here, and then eventually come down here, versus finding how to get here with, of course, deviations and things that go off course, but we've got this reference point, this line, like a laser for lining up studs, for drywall and different things, because of our decision and our commitment, and we're constantly evaluating every step of the way so that none of these little sways turn into something like this, where we get off track, okay? Hopefully that makes a little bit more sense, Paige. So evaluating along the way helps us see if we're in the proper boundaries that were set before beginning the game. Yes, we're evaluating. We're not. Okay, let me erase this. I made a mess here. Okay. What we're doing is we're here, we're making a decision, we're committing, okay, and then because of the decision and because of the clarity that comes with that, we know that the shortest distance from here to here is there, but we're not going to hold ourselves hostage to concrete expectations because we're going to evaluate. So we're going to start coming here, and then something happens that bumps us off the road, quickly evaluate and course correct. And then something bumps us off the road, quickly evaluate and course correct. And then something bumps us off the road, quickly evaluate and course correct. You'll find yourself as you do this and you build the appropriate habits that you start course correcting much quicker to be able to get where you want to be able to get to your decision. Okay? And so what we want to do is we want to have this boundary, this line set up before we start, which is our decision, and who's involved in helping us evaluate, which comes from our commitment, okay, so that we can evaluate along the way. What we don't do is get here, stop, come back to here, and evaluate what happened. Because then we've got to start the journey all over again. And a lot of us do this. We start heading down the path, and something happens, so emotionally or spiritually or even sometimes physically, we go back to the starting line and go, I wonder what happened up there, rather than triaging it along the way. And how do we know how to triage it effectively? Because we made a decision. We were clear about what the path was, the direction, so that we could guide our own persistence. Do you feel that people choose way more to evaluate in the valleys, in the harder times, or failures rather than at all stages of the journey? Absolutely, that's a great point. And Og talked about that in scroll number 3 that I read just barely when he said, where is it? Nor will I allow yesterday's success to lull me into today's complacency. We're not going to allow the victories, the amazing things, to dull our awareness of what could be possible course corrections. There are successes in your life that can be deviations from your decision. They're not bad, but evaluate them because they can lull you into complacency. They can lower your awareness. Okay, I've shared this before, I believe on here as well. Okay, it says, do you ever evaluate the decision along? Great question. I'll end with that one, Kiri. That's a great question. I've shared many times, I was a competitive powerlifter for a number of years. And in powerlifting, you squat first, then you bench press, then you deadlift in a meet. That's what you do. And I ask people all the time, which one do you think is the most dangerous? And I think the most common answer I get is usually deadlift because the word dead is in it. But it's not. It's actually whichever one you're the best at. Whichever of those things you're the best at is usually the one that is the most dangerous for you because it is the human condition for that to lower our awareness, to lower our evaluation, to help us lose sight of our decision because we start taking things for granted naturally because we're really good at it. So that's something we want to consider. Great question, because that is a natural human tendency to not evaluate as much when things are going well as we might when things are going bad. And usually what we do when things are going bad is we retreat and evaluate. You don't want to retreat. You don't want to give up the ground you've already created in your life and in your decision. With that said, you may find out, and I share this with you, Kiri and everyone else, with extreme caution. Okay, extreme caution. You may find out along the way to a decision that there is a different decision in order, a different decision that you should be seeking. Be really cautious about that because that could be impatience. That could be our microwave brain that wants things in 30 seconds, okay? And has convinced us that was the wrong decision and this should be the right decision. There are very few things that you can really make a significant decision on within a 6-month period that you shouldn't see through for 6 months. With that said, give it at least a couple of weeks, 30 days. It's going to be different for everyone. It's a very difficult question to answer specifically, Kiri. But just you're going to want to be aware that if you're going to do something, you're going to want to decide and commit and evaluate it along the way. And if you can confidently say you've done these things, you are all in. Not all in because every minute of every day is to get to that decision, okay, directly. There are plenty of things we do indirectly to get to that decision. For example, if I've got an income decision, I've made a decision to be at a certain income in 6 months, okay, and I'm working towards that. That doesn't mean I'm going to go tell my family, hey, family, you're not going to see me for 6 months, and go to my church and my community and say, I'm not going to be around. I'm totally focused on my income because I am all in. That's ridiculous. It doesn't work that way. That's not how you find a peaceful, fun, fulfilling life. What you do is you go all in on your commitment. You go all in on the things together that are involved in that equation. Because what is a great income worth if you don't have a family anymore? Okay. What is a great income worth if you don't have your health anymore? What is a great income worth? And we could continue to just go down that line. So there are things that directly impact this decision, and there are things that indirectly impact this decision. And Kiri, that may be something that adjusts your decision. If you've made a decision that you will be at a certain income in 6 months, and then a loved one falls sick and requires your attention at an incredible level, not because of guilt. I want to be careful with this. Someone mentioned extended family before. We want to be careful about some of this stuff, okay? But we're going to want to, we might need to deviate from that decision. You know, we had someone sign up to do something with us a while back, and then shortly after they signed up, they found out they had pancreatic cancer. They made a decision. They were committed to do what they wanted to do with us, but then life made a slightly different decision for them. And what they did is they took their decision and their commitment and their ability to evaluate and push and persist, and they turned it towards taking on that disease and living the best life possible and creating as good of an outcome as possible. So what you want to be careful of, and this is probably the best evaluation, Kiri, and anyone else who feels the need to adjust your decision, is the adjustment along the way in the evaluation to escape from something or to engage something more important. Not something more important in the moment, because remember, if we're faltering in any of these areas, it can feel more urgent in the moment than it actually is. Like, I feel like everyone needs to hear from me today, and then hardly anyone does, and then we beat ourselves up about it. And really, there are only a couple people that really needed to hear from you today. You know, I mentioned the message one because it's a really common one, because we live with our devices glued to our hands as if everyone needs to hear back from us immediately. They don't. And in fact, it makes you less available for the ones who really do, to be clearer about your decision, your commitment, to know which people are more direct to that decision and the important ones that are indirect. Now, if you're trying to get back to everyone as quickly as possible to increase your income, and then you alienate your family in the process, I mean, that's the kind of stuff we're talking about. But Kiri, what you want to do is you want to understand that if an adjustment to your decision needs to be made, just ask yourself, do I want to make this adjustment because I want life to be easier? Or in other words, I want to escape? Or am I doing this because this is the necessary decision to engage and get what I want and what I choose to and what I get to, okay? Hope that helps. All right, we're out of time. So hope this was helpful for you guys. Last thing I wanted to talk about, and I'll throw this out just really quick, is the warning at the beginning and the warning at the end are really important, because they're going to blindside your ability to do these things effectively. And that is, don't seek the answer to why you don't do things or why you can't do things, okay? Because that's a never-ending black hole of nothingness. But also, beware of false passion. Passion is a willingness to suffer for things that we love. It is at the core of persistence. When we make a decision, we commit, we evaluate, and we push, we will create passion. We will create passion to persist, and we'll create passion from persisting. It's a beautiful reciprocal engine. But beware of false passion. False passion is stimulated passion, meaning like excitement, enthusiasm, those kinds of feelings. They aren't bad. False passion's not bad, but don't assume that you're passionate just because you're excited. Don't assume that you're passionate just because you can't wait to get started. In fact, you're going to want to step back and consider everything that's involved. If you are not what my 11-year-old would call nervous and excited, then you might want to take a look at your decision. It may not be big enough, or it may not be clear enough to be able to consider those pieces, okay? So beware of false passion, because it will screw you over. If you think that you're passionate, you'll continually get frustrated if you really are just excited. Because we can get excited about ideas, but in order to create an idea, we will want to have passion. And many of us are more in love with the ideas that we have rather than what it actually takes to create them. And that requires passion. Thanks everybody for being on today. Hope this was helpful. Throw anything in the comments, questions, anything that I can address next time, and any topics that would be of service to all of you that attend these. Thanks so much for being here. It's not lost on me in how grateful and honored I am to be able to spend this much time with you every Tuesday to hopefully make an impact, hopefully take your life to the next level from just even one thing you heard today. Take care.